How the death of the late, great Jeff Beck, guitarist extraordinaire, influenced the latest Steve Hackett album. I'm John Bowden from Rock History Music.
I just heard about the death of Jeff Beck, which was a huge blow. It's the equivalent of, for the ancient Greeks, Achilles has just died.
Jeff Beck died in January of 2023, known as one of the greatest guitarists the world has ever seen or heard. As far as mainstream success, most of the world first heard of Jeff Beck as the replacement for Eric Clapton in the Yardbirds in the 60s. This was March of 1965. He later was replaced by Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin. It was Jeff Beck's solo work with albums like Blow by Blow who literally blew people's minds. And even though ex-Genesis guitarist Steve Hackett was recently voted as top guitarist for prog music, is of course known as a great, he looks back at Jeff Beck as a leader in the guitar field. Now, a little refresher about Steve Hackett before we get to the interview clips. Long before things like And Then There Were Three, Invisible Touch, and I Can't Dance, Genesis was a prog band, and a big prog band. In fact, the group lists as one of the greatest selling of all time in that category, even though they sold most of their records when they were really not doing prog anymore. But when Steve Hackett was in the band, well, he indirectly replaced Anthony Phillips, who was at the core. Let me tell you, in the beginning, Genesis was, and we're talking about their debut album, which came out March 28, 1969. Peter Gabriel on lead vocals, Tony Banks. He was a keyboard player, Anthony Phillips. As a guitarist, Mike Rutherford also played guitar, but mostly bass at that point, and John Silver on drums. This is before Phil Collins. By the time their second album came out in 1970, October 23rd, that one was called Trespass, or Trespass, if you're from England. John Silver was gone on drums, replaced by John Mayhew. Most Genesis fans would know that album with the song The Knife, which has become a classic. The classic Genesis lineup didn't show up until Nursery Cryme in 1971. And this is the lineup that prog fans usually like the most. Peter Gabriel on vocals, Tony Banks on keys, Mike Rutherford on bass and guitar, Steve Hackett lead guitar, and Phil Collins on drums. This was the album that garnered the musical box, which, along with Supper's Ready, are known as the quintessential Genesis songs featuring Peter Gabriel in that original 5 lineup. And that was the lineup that was the main fold until Peter Gabriel left after the end of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Peter Gabriel left in 1975. Steve Hackett lasted for 2 more albums after that, Trick of the Tail and Wind and Wuthering. Steve Hackett's new album is The Circus and the Nightwhale. It's an autobiographical album that goes way back to before he joined Genesis. In fact, he tells a tale in this clip of a guy he calls sort of an artful dodger type of guy, an old friend who was pretty crooked. And of course, he takes that from Oliver Twist, written by Charles Dickens. But first, and thank you for indulging me with a little history lesson. First, Jeff Beck influencing the latest Steve Hackett album on Rock History Music.
So really, it's a narrative-driven album. So if you're wondering where it comes from the story. And the story really came from myself and Joe. Joe suggested a lot of things, including the title. It was as if I was doing music for an imaginary movie. That was how the album took shape. So if you're wondering where some of those ideas came from, the sounds, and the guitar playing, of course, comes from the fact that as I started recording guitar for this, I just heard about the death of Jeff Beck, which was a huge blow to all guitarists. They think, no, that can't be it. It's the equivalent of, for the ancient Greeks, Achilles has just died. It's guitar heroics came in the form of Jeff. Perhaps he never really knew it himself to the degree that he was held in such high esteem by guitarists all over the world, not just British guitarists, but a number of whom I worked with, Steve Howe, Brian May. We were all going, yes, Jeff is the boy. And then suddenly, he's gone, and I thought, as I'm recording the guitar, I thought to myself, I wonder if he would have liked this move. Here's a move with the tremolo arm, here's some tapping, here's some noises. Would he have liked this? Am I breathing life into this thing?
So that little voice is there. That little that's great inspiration.
Yes, that's right. Yes. I think that. Of course, all music, in a way, I suspect that a lot of musicians that I really like suffer from impostor syndrome. One minute you think you're completely crap, and then something drives you to do something pretty good. And it's always that idea that you might not be great that night, and you're in front of a crowd and you've got to do something about it, whatever that is. I think it's called practice. It's a strange thing.
Squonk was one of those songs that made me stop in my tracks. I remember when I first heard that, I remember going, what? That's them? That's kind of cool. What?
Yes.
That's like a rocker.
Well, it is a rocker. And the re-record, we recorded it one tone down. Yeah. So I've got a detuned guitar for that. But it's something that I've been playing throughout this year. In order to celebrate, Seconds Out. So there's a revisit of a live album, but originally it was on Trick of the Tail from 1976, and I do like the way it sounds. I think that there's something about that drum sound, and it is a rocker. It's pretty straight ahead. It was the part of the mainstreaming of Genesis. I think we were closer to the mainstream with that, to have something slow, and I think it was powerful live the way we used to do it.
When his boots hit the ground, track 3, he's taking you down. Now, when I heard that,
yeah. Well, it's a description of a guy who I was at school with. We knew each other when we were 9 years old, and at 9, he was already a master poker player, an arsonist, a thief, a kind of artful dodger in my life. He had a problem with his leg, and I elected to push him around in a wheelchair. So I was kind of his minder. I was kind of his nurse. He was a little bit like my first manager. My mother jokes about this. He would get me jobs. I would dep for him. He would sometimes leave me at the brink of awful situations. He taught me to smoke, to play poker, to become an arsonist. It's just all the things that they don't teach you at school. And eventually, I realized that, he wasn't really interested in my well-being at all. He seemed to be at his happiness when I screwed up and what have you. And so one or two friends died. He was talking about very, very early days. We might have been 13, 14. And I said, "Oh, do you go swimming these days?" Because we used to go swimming together and what have you. He said, "Oh, I can't do that. I'm on pills." In other words, the sort of amphetamine type stuff that was around at the time. And I remember thinking, no, I'm not really interested in that. Even at that time, I thought it's not going to be a career move to get involved with that. I wanted to stay relatively healthy. I mean, hell, I was already underage drinking and smoking. So I had to weather all of that like many of us young teenagers have to do. But then, one of our friends died before he was out of his teens on heroin. And I always thought to myself, is he the guy that provided that because he was a Mr. Fix-It, And I just think, no, he didn't really have a conscience. He had plenty of ambition. He was an entrepreneur, as you would say. over that, and so funnily enough, the lines, because I was looking for a chorus for this track, and it was Joe who suggested, when his boots hit the ground, he's taking you down. That was, and it was a very masculine lyric to come out of Joe, who's a very sweet girl, as you know, and
the guy from Taking You Down. Do you know whatever happened to him? I'm curious.
I don't know. We lost touch. We went to different schools, and I don't really know what happened to him after that. I imagine he's either in prison or running a South American country somewhere with a moustache. That's what I think. Dark glasses, moustache, Senor, with a the album is a look at People of the Smoke. The opening track is like the smoke is a euphemism for London. That's what people used to call London. They call it the smoke. Oh, you're going up to the smoke. That's what they used to say in northern territories. So, oh, going up smoke. Yeah, he's living up there. So this is London, 1950, heavily polluted, heavily bombed, recovering. Particularly the area that I grew up in, it was alongside the river, Pimlico, industry, Battersea Power Station, all of that stuff. So I wanted to evoke that time. And that's why the album starts in the way that it does, with a number of things that are distinctly not rock and roll.
I heard a rooster in there.
You heard a rooster in there, yeah, that's right. Well, that was from, there used to be this newsreel that was shown at cinemas called Pathy News, and later on it became Pathy Pictorial. I think they made the rooster in this kind of little sort of laurel wreath surrounding the rooster. It would crow, and then you'd get the weekly news, and that's what it sounded like. You heard a little bit of a news broadcast about going to the polls, the idea that the British were going to elect a new government, potentially.
Congratulations, Prog magazine.
Yeah, weird, isn't it? That it's I mean, I make a noise for a living.
But look at the group you're in. Look at the group. You're in a group of, man, you got to have your chops to get in that room. And first of all, they voted you number one.
Right. Well, it's nice, isn't it? That the British are very kind of modest about this sort of thing. Sometimes you do a show and you think, hey, I got away with it again. Do you know what I mean? That feeling of, is it ever? Do you ever qualify?
Wrote lyrics together with this stuff. Sometimes I wrote things on my own if they were orientated towards her. In other words, if they were love songs, and there are love songs on the album that I hope it doesn't upset the progressive community too much, because I know that they struggle with love songs. They don't struggle with war, with difficult time signatures, with guitar salvos and all the rest, and heroics as we know it. But a simple love song, whoa, got to be very careful. But I decided to go there anyway and upset the apple cart. So,
like Found and Lost, like gorgeous little ditty, little jazzy right in between there. Love that.
Oh, I'm glad you like that one. Yeah, somebody mentioned that yesterday. I thought that was a track that everyone would miss, because really it's just an hors d'oeuvre for what comes in. It's practically not a track. It's barely longer than a minute, but it was about first love and the thought that it was going to last forever, and then it didn't. And then suddenly I was, a sort of lovelorn teenager and moping around for the next 3 or 4 years after that. But I realized that I had to concentrate on music was going to be my savior. That was really it.
Did he contact you when you left Genesis, before or after?
Oh,
I know.
well, we talk, and we've got a birthday coming up soon, so I'm going to phone him up if he doesn't get to me first. And we will wish each other happy birthday. Mine's on the 12th of Feb, and his is on the 13th. So we share the same certain things, the rising sign as well. So we both have that.
So you're an Aquarian.
Yeah, Aquarian. Yeah, for all that means you're Aquarian too.
February 1st.
Oh, well,
yeah.
there we are. Yes.
But
And so was Richie Havens. He was Aquarian. And so was our manager, Aquarian, and so was Phil Collins. So we had three guys who were Aquarian in that band with an Aquarian manager. Extraordinary. As there were three Taurians in King Crimson when it was John Wetton and Robert and Bill Bruford. Three Taurus, three Aquarians. What's going on here? It's.
But did he get a hold of you, or when you decided to leave Genesis?
Yeah.
Did he say, how's it going? You doing okay? Were you guys in contact back then?
Yeah, I think we were from time to time. I'm trying to remember what the order of events was. I mean, certainly very shortly afterwards, we had a Genesis reformation in the early 80s to help the state of Peter's finances, because he was heavily involved with WOMAD and it had lost a lot of money, although it was a great idea.
Although, is this a one-off show?
It was a one-off show that we had at Milton Keynes, and then I did another charity thing myself, and I asked Pete if he'd be involved, and then when Mike Rutherford heard that was happening, he said he'd like to be involved as well. So luckily, we were able to do something that involved future members of Marillion and Genesis, and to make that effort.
Was Steve Rothery part of that?
Not at that stage. I came to know Steve, later on, and we're pals, and we do hang out together, and we've been threatening to do something together for quite some time.
I talked to him last week. He loves you, man. He loves you. That's all. I talked to him last week. He just loves you. He's
a brilliant player, and they put on a great show, Marillion, and I think they're getting better all the time. So not everybody is winding down. I know he's very proud of their new album. He was telling me that he feels it's really very good, and so I think, I suspect he's. I think he's onto a winner with that. But he's a very nice guy, as you can tell, and again, very, very modest. And his wife is named Jo as well, so you get the Steve and Jo show twice. It's when we get together. She's very sweet, as is my Jo as well, and so. Yeah, you probably read that same article in Progressive magazine, Prog magazine, about. He's doing an interview talking about, our wives are chatting away on one side of the table, and there's the two of us. He said, talking about guitars and world domination. So, yeah.
Get a chance to talk to the guys before or after their last show when I know Peter was there, and people were asking, why didn't Peter get on stage? And I went, it wasn't about Peter at that point. He was backstage, but I tried to explain to people that. But anyway, go ahead.
The truth is, I had a ton of shows booked, and I was worried about all the nights when they were working. I was working at the same time. Sometimes we were in the same town, same night, and so I couldn't. And then there was one night, which I think was either their last show or close to it. And I knew I was about to undertake a 2-month tour of the United States and Canada. And I thought, if I catch COVID by going along to this show, sitting there in an audience, this is I'm responsible for everyone else's night out. People have bought tickets 3 years ago, and we're only just managing to deliver those shows now. As it happens, one of our number caught COVID, and the Canadian gigs had to be sidelined once again. So they're going to happen at the end of the year, and there's some extra American dates to support that. Cost of freight goes up. So we have to travel a long distance with expenses and make things work out financially. So I'm just with those few days, I'm just looking for a break even rather than trying to make a profit with that. That's the idea, is not to lose your shirt. That's the idea.
Yeah. Have you? I know you're in contact with Peter now and then. He hasn't played you any of his new album, has he?
No. Do you know something I don't? Has he finished a new one, or is it close?
Well, Manu Cachet, his drummer, has, I hope I'm saying that right, has said that they were working on a new album. They're swinging around, but Peter's so secretive about, especially his music. I was just
right.
So.
No, I don't know anything. Last time I spoke to him was on our mutual birthday. We share the same birthday by 24 hours, and so I gave him a call round about the birthday, and we had a little chat, and he said he was working on new stuff. That's all I knew then. So I don't know if it's ready to roll now. It's a perfect time for him to release that, because for me at the moment, I'm not bringing out anything new other than the live stuff, of course, which is already in the charts over here, and it's right next to Ed Sheeran, it seems. I'm one place higher in the chart than Ed Sheeran, but hey, maybe he's been higher and he's on the way down with that, Very talented man.
Remember, subscribe to our newsletter and you'll never miss a video that we release ever. There seems to be a problem with YouTube these days and them distributing our videos to the right people, at least to the 128,000 people who subscribe, like you, to this channel. So join our newsletter. We'll send you 1, sometimes 2 newsletters a week, just letting you know what the new videos are. That's it. And remember, there'll be weekly prizes for our subscribers as well. Everything that is rock history music is in the description. The link to the newsletter, how you can join our Patreon, how you can make a donation to our channel if you love what we do. Remember, subscribe to the channel, like our videos, click the bell notification so you don't miss anything. It's important to us. Comment on the videos. We read all the comments. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Music.